The Penn Relays are officially over for 2024. And the reason why that actually matters is because it has been one of the biggest track and field events on the American calendar for years now. They even call it a carnival. That if you actually love the sport, you want to go to the Penn Relays. And to know that I'm not making it up, because even Usain Bolt came. He didn't have to do it, but he chose to do it. To run in a race that technically doesn't mean anything. Because Penn was such a big deal. And of course, he showed out when he got there. If you've never actually been to the Penn Relays, allow me to break it down real quick. Think about everything that people don't like about track and field, but specifically, waiting around for the next event to start. Because people want action. It's why they watch football and basketball. Well, the Penn Relays figured out how to solve that problem. You get a whole bunch of teams and you keep throwing them on the track over and over and over again. And you do it in relays, which are already very entertaining in themselves. After all that, you call the championship final for every single level, a championship of America. And you give out some form of a championship trophy to the winners. You now have yourself a hit on the track and field schedule. But if you actually paid attention to the event this year, which wasn't easy to do because you couldn't find it on cable, regardless, there was something missing from the Penn Relays. The USA versus the World format, which was basically the main event of the whole thing. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time complaining about it, and I will give a brief recap of some of the major highlights from the meet. But what you have to understand is that USA versus the World used to be not just the main event of this meet, but one of the main events of the year. Remember, Usain Bolt came to America in the month of April to run on a college track, in essentially a college meet. Because USA versus the World was really USA versus Jamaica in the sprints, and it was a battle for bragging rights. But at this very moment, all of that is a thing of the past. So all of the best professional men and women for America were not at Penn. And I've already made it clear that I have strong feelings on the 4x1s, specifically for Team USA. They need all the practice they can get from what I can tell. Yet some of them were competing in the Diamond League over in China, and others were at the USATF Grand Prix in Bermuda for whatever the American Track League is actually supposed to be. And that left Penn to basically become a showcase for the best collegiate teams on the men's and women's sides. Sorta kinda. In addition to some of the best high school athletes in the entire country. But the thing is, they did not come alone. And I'm getting to that in a moment. So the truth is that this version of the Penn Relays really isn't all that much like anything I remember from the past. But it doesn't mean that there wasn't a whole lot worth noticing. And I'm sure you weren't paying attention. But that's what you have me for, to tell you. But if you're new here, I have to say thank you for even making it this far into the video. And I'm Coach Rob, the founder of SCArecruiting.com, where I rank the best high school track and field recruits in the entire nation. And if anything that I say actually connects with you, it is always greatly appreciated if you would please like and subscribe. But if I don't, just let me know in the comments section, because I try to read them all. Before I get into any of the results from the meet, I am going to point out that the clock is always pretty irrelevant when you're at Penn, and there are two real reasons why. The first is that the track itself really isn't that fast. It runs around the football field, and normally that means you get very long turns and very short straightaways. Not a great recipe for fast times, even if the athletes are primed for it. We saw that when Bolt showed up to the meet. They did win, but they didn't run as fast as they could. But beyond that, there's another reason. The only way to get that many fast teams on the track and keep the entertainment on the track, you need to have those heats ready to go. Basically shotgun style, over and over and over again. So the athletes, at least when they're at Penn, have to warm up somewhere else, which is normal in track and field meets. They end up in holding for a very long time. Those holding patterns are setting them up for their heats. You might be waiting around for 5, 10, 15, 20, it could be 30 or 40 minutes before your heat actually goes off, which is again, not a great recipe to run fast, especially for the 4x1, when you can't practice any handoffs on the track that I just described, which is already very irregular. So in the college races, the men of South Florida figured out how to win the 4x1 under those circumstances. And their team is actually legitimately fast. They have a whole bunch of transfers on the roster, But in the 4x1, they have Saminu Abdul Rashid. And if you don't know the name, listen to me now. You need to remember it, because he's likely going to be there in the NCAA championship final. And the only reason you probably didn't recognize him is because he was dominating NAIA last year. But now he's in Division 1. He also runs for Nigeria, and he'll be a threat in the Olympics. At least, you'll see him somewhere in the prelims. And if he can figure out how to break 10 seconds in the Olympic heats, he is a threat to make the final. It's just the way the numbers work. Texas A&M won the 4x4, and they actually ran fast when they did it. And Ahmad Robinson was on that team, whom, like I said before, is going to be a problem at the Olympic trials, but of course at the NCAA championships. And on the women's side, the Ladies of Houston figured out how to bring home a championship of America. They did it in the 4x4, but the men were supposed to do it in the 4x1. They actually went 1-2 in the college men's 100, but still lost to USF in the 4x1. And I do apologize for not addressing everything that happened during the meet, specifically at the college level. And remember, I'm rattling this all off from memory. But I've got to be honest, the high school side is really where the fireworks were for the meet. To keep it a buck with you, the Penn Relays really used to be about the USA versus the world format, which was primarily USA and Jamaica, going at it in a bunch of events. But now, that's exactly what we're getting at the high school level. American high school teams from around the country attend Penn. But to be honest with you, most of them are from up and down the East Coast. But Jamaica sends a large contingent of high school athletes, and they're sending their absolute best. And we all know that Jamaica takes track and field very seriously. But you gotta remember, this is a country with a population size below 3 million. That is half the size of New York City. And yes, they did send some teams to Penn. So I'm gonna need you to do me a favor, and please keep that in mind for every result that I'm about to rattle off at the high school level. Boys and girls teams from Jamaica won the 4x1, going 1, 2, and 3 on both sides, with 2/3 of the final from only their high schools. I'm not making this up. They also won the 4x4 on both sides, with a lot of teams still in the final. To put this in perspective, the boys from the Bullis School are the high school national record holders indoors in the 4x4, and they got third, even with Quincy Wilson running a miracle leg splitting under 45 seconds. And no, it wasn't just the sprinting events. A Jamaican high school girls team went second in the 4x8. They lost to Union Catholic, which is most famous for putting out Sidney McLaughlin-Lavroni. But the boys from Jamaica still won the 4x8 as well. They went 1-2 in the girls' high jump and 1-2 in the boys' long jump. But they swept 1, 2, and 3 in both the boys' and girls' triple jump. They even won the boys' shot put and the boys' discus. And it's not like we didn't have some of the best boys throwers in the entire nation showing up to compete. Benjamin Shue was there. He's the #1 thrower in the class of 2025. And #2 overall in the SCA top 10 for his class. And he did not win the event. I knew Jamaican high schools were good, but I did not know they were that good. And it really puts into perspective why it's incredibly hard to be a 5-star recruit in an American high school. Because athletes from around the world can show up and show out, regardless of how good you are in your state. But I cannot end this video without shouting out all the 5-star recruits who proved they are just as good as advertised, because Avery Lewis won the long jump at the Penn Relays, and she is in the SCA top 10, headed to USC. And her 2024 classmate Layla Giordano took care of business in the discus. She won the event to prove that she deserves to be a 5-star recruit at 90 overall, and she's headed to Princeton with all that talent. But keep in mind, 6 of the next 7 finishers in that event behind her were all Jamaican. And Drew Griffith validated his 5-star ranking by winning the mile, in a race that was never really all that close when you look at the results. Which is really good news for Notre Dame, because him and Ryan Pajak went 1-2 in that event, and are both committed to them. I do admit that the Penn Relays sure enough ain't what it used to be, but that doesn't mean that it's not worth paying attention to. And Jamaica clearly believe that they need to take it seriously. If you really are legit in the NCAA, you will get a shot to compete against the best. You just gotta keep winning along the way. But in high school, meets like the Penn Relays just might be your only shot to prove that you belong against the best of the best. And the Penn Relays was a good reminder that in track and field, it is always USA versus the world. even if it is not an Olympic year. SCA track and field gear is here. Fast is a lifestyle, and what you wear should reflect that. Order yours at scarecruiting.com/shop or use the link in the description below. It's a huge support to me and this channel, so I can continue to make you more content like this. And remember, it is always greatly appreciated if you would please like and subscribe.